Well, are yins ready? It's crazy how fast 7 years goes. Back in September of 2016, the first ever NHL future I said was why the Toronto Maple Leafs will win the Stanley Cup in 2024, ending Canada's curse. And we're about to find out if that is true because the 107th NHL season, concluding with the 2024 Stanley Cup Finals, is only a mere days away. So we're going to go through this piece by piece. We're going to try to go through as quickly and efficiently as we can. If you don't want to sit through the entire video, then you might want to click it off right now because we're going to go through a lot of important information. But if you want to sit here throughout the duration and you don't have a lot of time, simply play it back at a higher playback speed. We're going to go through this piece by piece, and I will explain why I fully expect the Leafs to break the 57-year curse in 2024. So without further ado, let's get into it. People are going to ask, don't you normally do this on Patreon? Yes, I do. But how many videos have I made covering hockey where I mention that I expect Toronto to win the Stanley Cup in 2024? Every single person watching this video, whether you're on the Patreon or not, knows this is what I'm thinking or what I'm predicting is going to happen. I've been saying it for 7 years, going on 8 by the time 2024 gets here. We're about to find out whether it's true or not. So we'll still do plenty of shit on the Patreon as always, but this is going out publicly, and we're going to see if this ends up being correct or not. So without further ado, let's get into this. So, 24 is Canada's number. For those of you that don't know, the language of gematria. C the third letter, A the first, N the 14th, A the first, D the fourth, A the first. Add it up. It's 24. Everything Canada is 24. Okay? The Prime Minister resides at 24 Sussex Drive in Ottawa. The Montreal Canadiens have won 24 Stanley Cups. Now, there's always some cocksucker that'll say, no, you're wrong about that. They've only won 23 Stanley Cups. If you go to records.nhl.com, this shows the NHL's entire history from 1917-18 through 2022-23. You type in records.nhl.com, hover your mouse over playoffs, hover it over standings, go to overall, you'll get this exact page. They've won 23 Stanley Cups in the NHL. Now, as much as I don't like to use, where's it at on here? I guess I don't have it up here. Hang on. List of Stanley Cup champions. Let's go to Wokepedia for a minute. As much as I hate using Wokepedia, this is how you solve this problem. You can do a lot of investigative journalism. Something the mainstream media doesn't know anything about. So if you scroll down to the Challenge Cup era, this is from 1893 through 1914, and then it'll bring up the NHA, which is the National Hockey Association, which predated the NHL. And then you have like the Pacific Coast Hockey League and a lot of these other West Coast leagues. It was basically, to make a long story short, East Coast versus West Coast that existed from 1915 through 1926. So 1916 was when the Canadiens won their first Stanley Cup. We're going to talk a lot about Montreal in this video. But 1916, they beat the Portland Rosebuds, which were the PCHA, which was the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, existed from 1911 through 1924. Portland Rosebuds actually were a real team. Montreal, which was, again, a part of the NHA, which existed before the National Hockey League, that was when they won their first Stanley Cup. So they have 24 Stanley Cups. Their first one in the NHL, of course, go figure, 1924, between the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Tigers. Again, everything Canada's 24. We're going to get into this in much greater detail. So, the Toronto Raptors won their only NBA Finals in their 24th season. We're going to beat 24 to death in this video. Now, what's interesting about the Raptors, remember, the Raptors play in Scotiabank Arena, the same arena as the Maple Leafs. Now, when they did this in their 24th season, it was the 73rd season of the NBA. That was the 2018-19 NBA Finals. This upcoming season will be the Maple Leafs' 73rd season in the playoffs. Again, playoff seasons means the Maple Leafs in their existence, they have made the playoffs 72 times. This will be number 73, like how the Raptors won their only NBA Finals in the 73rd season of the NBA, their 24th season of existence. And I want you to see how Raptors, in the most simple cipher, the alphabetic order, sums to 107. Again, this year is the 107th season of the NHL. And one thing to think about, we're going to talk more about this in a moment, but I'm pretty sure the start date of the Stanley Cup is going to be June 7th, right? 6/7. Okay, like how the Leafs last won the Cup in 1967. The NHL expansion happened in 67. We're going to talk more about this in a moment. But from March 27th to the Stanley Cup Finals, June 7th, which I believe is when they're going to start it, that is exactly 72 days later. And both Toronto and Toronto Maple Leafs sum to 72. And notice this March 27th game against the New York Knicks. This is the game that's 72 days before the start of the Stanley Cup, in case I'm getting dyslexic. That's the 73rd game of the season for the Raptors. They play the New York Knicks. And what's interesting about that, I just want you to see something. I want you to see how New York Knicks is 178. So is Edmonton Oilers. And I've been thinking that that's the most likely Stanley Cup matchup. I'm not saying 100% certainty that we're going to see two Canadian teams, but that's certainly been my thought, that this is, because you always hear that, right? Oh, the NHL's rigged against Canada. And quite frankly, the people who say that, they're not wrong. They're not wrong, but we have to consider other teams, right? Like, for example, the team from Las Vegas won the Stanley Cup in 23. Remember, Kraken is 24. Seattle is 107. They're a 107 team. Kings is 24. And I'll show you something else too. Whoops. I'll just show you something else. Los Angeles Kings is also 61. The Maple Leafs, if you count their history just as the Maple Leafs, they got 267 playoff wins, right? If you have to win 16 to win the Stanley Cup. If they win the Cup, they'll get their 281st playoff win as the Toronto Maple Leafs, because they used to be the Toronto Arenas and the Toronto St. Patrick's. They'd get their 291st all-time win. They'd get their 281st as the Leafs. That's the 61st prime number. And again, Los Angeles Kings is 61. It's got me thinking it's possible. Shit, hit the wrong button. But I won't even. Winnipeg Jets is also 61 in the most pure cipher. I don't really think it's the Jets season, though. I got a hard time imagining Winnipeg being in the finals. To me, if there's an American team that makes the most sense, you could consider Seattle or LA. We know LA's got I will say this. The next time the Kings play the Oilers in the playoffs, I guarantee you the Kings will win that series. And those of you that have followed this channel, you know why. So again, the 2018-19 NBA season, 73rd season of the NBA. It'll be the Leafs' 73rd season in the playoffs. The 1924 Stanley Cup Finals was again between the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Tigers. The Toronto Blue Jays, what happened to them? Their first World Series they ever won was the 89th World Series. 89 is the 24th prime number. The 1989 Stanley Cup Finals was the last time we saw two Canadian teams in the finals. Again, it was the Montreal Canadiens over the Calgary Flames. It's like mathematics, right? You go from 1989, it's all about 24, right? 24 is the magic number. So from 1989, what's the next logical number in the sequence to put two Canadian teams in the finals? 1989, 2024, right? It's all mathematics and pattern recognition. That's why I'm thinking we're getting two Canadian teams. So just in the everything that we've covered, if you're already on my Patreon, this is going to be a review for you guys, but we're just going to go through all the 24s with Canada to be thorough, to show you exactly why I've been so confident in this. I'm always a confident motherfucker. It's just the way I am. But anyway, well, I got to get rid of some of these tabs. So the 2022 International Ice Hockey Federation World Championship. You guys remember this? We had Finland winning this game. Why? Because Finland improved to 2-4 in gold medal games against Canada. So the World Junior Championship. This was right around the time I started my YouTube page. I think I started it back in October of 2020. Somewhere in there, I'd have to go back and look at my first video, but it was sometime around there. No, it wouldn't have been that. No, it had to be in. Yeah, because I started making videos talking about why Tampa Bay would win the 2020 Stanley Cup Finals over Dallas. So it had to be sometime in August or September. But anyway, the U.S. stunned Canada that year, right? And they won the gold medal in the World Juniors. Who scored the winning goals for the U.S.? Number 15, number 9. Add up 15 and number, because the U.S. won 2-0. They scored 2 goals by number 15, number 9. 15 plus 9, 24. This here, the 2022 World Junior Championship, was the most confident I have ever been in any future or any prediction I have ever made in my lifetime that Canada would win this gold medal. You guys remember this? I literally have a video where I called Hockey Canada and I asked them about all the 89s and 24s and how perfectly synced up it was. Remember that? And I got hung up on in less than a minute by the woman who I was on the phone with. I guess she was one of those smug little assholes. But anyway, Canada won their 19th World Junior Championship. You guys remember this? I'm not going to go through the whole thing. We're just going to get to the juicy stuff. Remember, we talked about this being after the first World Junior Championship after the Wuhan pandemic. Because remember, the word virus is 89, and they were making a big deal about the Omicron variant, which was 89, and 89 was the 24th prime number, and Canada's 24, and they could win their 19th gold medal right after COVID-19, when Wuhan is 67, like hockey, the 19th prime number. But anyway, remember what they did? The World Junior Championship began on August 9th, right? 8/9, 89, the 24th prime number. The last year, there were 2 Canadian teams in the final. The same year, Wayne Gretzky got traded from Edmonton to LA. That's that anniversary, 8/9. That happened in 88, but it happened on 8/9. So Kent Johnson, we talked about how it was the 46th World Junior Championship, and Hockey Canada's 46, and Kent Johnson scored the winning goal. But remember this is what I called Hockey Canada about. They're the governing body of Canadian, their Canadian Olympic teams and that World Junior teams and all that. Remember they said that this was because of supposedly of sexual assault allegations, right? We just saw the University of Michigan hockey player get kicked off of their team for a supposed and alleged hate crime. Probably didn't do anything. Probably another bullshit story. I'm sure Ian Kennedy and Aka Malou jizzed in their pants over that happening. But anyway, 2 guys that got a pussy where their balls should be. If you don't know who they are, don't worry about it. They're definite frauds and losers. But anyway, it said Hockey Canada paid out $8.9 million in sexual assault settlements since 1989. When from when the news broke about the allegations to the gold medal game was exactly 89 days later. Remember? And this is what I explained to the woman on the phone in the first minute, and she hung up on me. Typical smug little cocksucker. Remember, we covered this years ago. I guess this was last year, August 11th. Remember when Edmonton Oilers, their super fan, Ben Stelter, he died on 8/9. Remember the 2022 Women's Ice Hockey World Championships? It was the 24th such event. Guess who won gold there? Canada. Remember the Olympics, the 2022 Olympics for the Canadian for the women's ice hockey, 2022 Olympics. Another just easy call, plain as day, that Canada would beat the U.S. because the U.S. fell to 2-4 versus Canada in gold medal games. We covered the death of Rodim Amirov. We covered this story when it broke on August 14th. He died at age 21. Remember, he passed away in the 226th day of the year, the day leaving 139 days left in the year, when 139 is the 34th prime and murder's 34. And, of course, this guy, his name's perfectly synced up with the Jesuits and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And remember, he died exactly 57 days before the start of the 107th NHL season, where the Maple Leafs can break the 57-year curse when this guy was a Toronto Maple Leafs prospect. And I got a whole video on this. You can go back and watch it. Just type in this player's name, Rodim Amirov, on my Lexi 91. It'll come right up. If you haven't seen it, just go back and watch it. But anyway, like I've been saying, I suspect it's June 7th is the start of the Stanley Cup, because the regular season ends on April 18th. More than likely, because that's a Thursday, more than likely the playoffs are going to begin on Saturday on 20/4, April 20th, Weed Day, because National Hockey League's 204. And usually the Stanley Cup playoffs, they last from the start of the playoffs to the start of the Stanley Cup is usually in recent years has been somewhere between 46 to 48 days. That's why I'm saying more than likely, if it's not June 7th, it'll be June 5th. Which would also make plenty of sense, right? The 157th day of the year, because 2024 is a leap year. So June 5th will be the 157th day of the year, not June 6th. June 6th was back in 2021, or not 2021, 2022, why we were so confident that the Colorado Avalanche would sweep the Edmonton Oilers in the Western Conference Final, because I just said follow the 37s. You know, they should sweep the Oilers because Game 4 was on the 157th day of the year, and sure enough, it happened. The only time a 37 burned me was with Florida this past year against Vegas. They changed it up on us, and that's why we got to get better. We got to get more knowledge, because I see what they did now, syncing that up with the Nuggets and the 96 finals, and they are clever in how they do shit. I will say, I'll give them credit. But June 7th. That's the 159th day of the year, the day leaving 207 days left in the year. And Edmonton, Alberta is 159. Toronto Maple Leafs is 207. So I am thinking that more than likely we're going to get Leafs Oilers. Am I saying for sure it's Edmonton? No. But the way that Raptors game lines up on March 27th, their 73rd game of the year, 72 days before June 7th against the New York Knicks, who have the same gematria as Edmonton Oilers, pay attention to the score of that game and what the records are. If you see somebody can pick up their 37th win or 37th loss, I haven't looked at the all-time records, you can lock that one up. But we'll see. So, again, I go on to talk a little bit more about this. But, again, the full video, check it out if you haven't seen it. Connor McDavid. Remember, Connor McDavid got engaged to his girlfriend, Lauren Kyle. And he did so on the June 26th. That was the date he did that. June 26th, 201 days before his upcoming birthday. And a lot of times when these athletes get married, or somebody dies in relation to their family, or they have a child, it's usually always a sign that team might end up in the finals. And we know about 201 and the Jesuits, the one who controls the rigged NHL and the rest of professional sports, the ones who run your whole fucking world. And of course, it's interesting as well that and it's also interesting that he got engaged to Lauren Kyle, 43 days after the Oilers were eliminated by the Golden Knights. on Israel's birthday, when State of Israel's another 201. So we will keep an eye on the Oilers and the Leafs this year. But the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, it was 1993. Again, Montreal. If you don't, Montreal equals 93, and you have to spell it correctly. You got to put the French accent above the O, because Montreal, if you don't use the accent, Montreal will sum to 98. But the actual way it's spelled with the accent, an accent will make a letter a null value in gematria. So Montreal's 93. They won the Cup in 93. It'll be 2024. Will mark 31 years since a Canadian team last did it. The word hockey is 31. Hockey is Canada's sport. And again, the 93. And that is something to think about, too. The 93 finals was Montreal over LA. Again, the Kings, they're not out of the question. I mean, a lot of people think the Kings are going to be pretty good again. I would imagine they will be. And the Kings got a narrative to definitely beat the Oilers. I guarantee it'll happen, because the Kings right now are 2-7 versus the Oilers in the playoffs. They've played in 9 series. Edmonton has won 7 of them. Edmonton and Los Angeles are both 37 in the most pure cipher. So I can guarantee you LA will beat Edmonton the next time they meet in the playoffs. But anyway, the Leafs, right? 1966-67, their last Stanley Cup winning season. That was their 50th season as the Toronto franchise. Their 40th as the Maple Leafs. And go figure, right? Look at the date they won the Cup. They won it on May 2nd, right? And they won 3-1. 3-1 was the score. And of course, Montreal lost the series 2-4. So we will keep an eye on it. Again, in gematria, and we don't talk about septenary gematria all the time. It is a relevant cipher. Stanley Cup Finals is 57 in that cipher. Again, 57 is the championship number. When you write out 57, it's 131, just like championship, NBA Finals, World Series. They all got that 57 gematria. Super Bowl's 131 again and again and again. Collingwood just won the rigged AFL Finals. Collingwood's 57 in the most pure cipher. That was Martin Bryant's birthday, 5/7. They just won it in the 127th season of the AFL. Martin Bryant, born on the 127th day of the year. The grand final was 146 days after Bryant's birthday. They won that grand final over Brisbane. Brisbane's 146. They were not my favorite team. That was a lot. The AFL was trickier this year, but hey, that's life, man. We're gonna find same thing with this. It's been true. It's been more tricky in recent years. We're gonna find out whether or not this is correct. We're going to find out whether it's not correct. But NHL expansion happened in 67, hockey 67, New Edinburgh. That's the place where 24 Sussex Drive is. It's another one. It's another 67. So one more thing I will say. What I will say, not even if, but I'll put this out for free. The next time, where are they at? Look at the Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres have 124 playoff wins all time. What I will say, the next time the Sabres make the playoffs, put a future in on them to win the Eastern Conference. Not the Stanley Cup, but the Eastern Conference. If they make the playoffs this year, people would think Buffalo's getting better. They showed improvement last year. It's all scripted. They can script whatever they want. If Buffalo makes the playoffs, put a future in on them to win the Eastern Conference, because you got to win 12 games to reach the Stanley Cup final. 4 7-game series, right? So if the Sabres, they can make the Stanley Cup by getting their 136th playoff win, that's exactly what happened with the Colorado Avalanche in 2022, which is why we were so confident they would win the Western Conference that year. We were so confident about it. We knew that they would win the West. And like we said at the beginning of the year, definitely have that future on them to win the Stanley Cup, because they look like they could definitely win it. They ended up doing it, but we were 100% certain they were winning the West. Like last year, Stanley Cup's 37 in the most pure cipher. It's 136 in the most simple cipher, the alphabetic order. That's why we loved Florida to make the Stanley Cup last year, and I fucking went against it when I put out the prediction in January of 2023. That's why I hate my fucking self and the way my mind works sometimes. Should have never came off it, even though they sucked all year, Florida. They squeak into the playoffs, and then I doubt the 37. And then when it gets to the Stanley Cup and the Stanley Cup set, I said, oh, Vegas can get their 37th loss in the Stanley Cup. That's got to happen. Not thinking that they got it synced up with the fucking NBA Finals and the Denver Nuggets, who play in Colorado when Florida's the 27th state, and Florida lost the Stanley Cup 27 years ago to the team from fucking Denver that plays in the same arena as the Nuggets. It's like, sometimes you don't have every piece, if you're off by just one letter, one number, then your entire research is irrelevant. But keep an eye on the Sabres the next time they make the playoffs. Now, you could argue, what if they squeak into the playoffs, or what if they even make the playoffs, period, and they get swept in the first round? You have a point. Perhaps it's for the next year. That's part of what happens, right? Same thing with the Leafs. Remember when the Leafs, we really liked the Leafs to get their 55th playoff series win against the Tampa Bay Lightning. We thought it would happen in 2022, not thinking they might lose to the Lightning in 2022, play them again in 2023, then get their 55th playoff win against the Lightning all time. And that's exactly what happened. That's why sometimes with these games, same thing when you decode the NFL or the NBA or any sport, you're like, well, this team could get this win against the AFC or against the AFC West or whatever. Maybe they play them again. Maybe they play him again, and it doesn't have to happen in that game. It could happen in a game down the road, or it could happen against another team who has the same gematria. That's why, again, like I say, the individual games, they can be tricky sometimes. Some of these lines, the way they have it set up, they might be like, you know what, you're gonna lose this time, and then we'll give it to you the next year, like they did with that 50-50. That's why I say, man, hey, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. It's life. Life goes on, whether it's right or wrong. Either way. We got to expose the evil, and we got to expose the script and just how they play it out. Is that what they're doing? Are they giving it to the Leafs this year? I suspect they are. But if Buffalo makes the playoffs, y'all better have that future in, because it just might happen. But right now, if I had to make a prediction, I would say Leafs and Oilers, but definitely Leafs to get that Stanley Cup. And hopefully by now, and again, that Canada 24 list, there's a hell of a lot more to that, but we just hit the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, guys, I'll talk to you soon. Till next time.